Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This week, sort of extra special, right here in our backyard. We have UFC Nashville. We get a little bit of a swap up in our main event, but still excellent fight, man. We got top bantamweights, Cory Sandhagen taking on Rob Font. And then in the co-main event, exciting fight down at women's strawweight. We got former champion Jessica Andrade as she takes on rising contender Tatiana Suarez, who's everybody's pumped up for. We have taken a little bit of hits, but we're still left with 12 fights as we go toward weigh-ins. As always, we're going to try to highlight the best fights and our best bets on the card, so please like and subscribe before we get started. As far as last week went, UFC 291, another incredible pay-per-view, man. 9 of the 11 fights finished inside the distance. Unfortunately for me, not the night I was hoping for. You know, Samuelsberger gets that finish in round 1 with the knockdown that he had, and it's a much different night. I do have to bring up the fact that was totally punched by Vinicius Salvador that stopped the fight with CJ Vergara. That was not an eye poke. Is what it is. You got to have short memory in this game, man. Move on to next week. But for yourself, sharp, concise night for you at 291.
Yeah. So we'll take a look over at your card first. First one on the card, Michael Chiesa. I don't know. I just watched an interview where he's still talking about he thinks he still has another win left in the tank, and he's coming back to prove all the haters wrong. And it was just a tough look out there. He looked like he didn't want to be out there at all after that first takedown didn't land. But, you know, given the matchup, the stylistic matchup, I definitely understand the underdog play there. Vinicius Salvador, you already talked about it. That definitely helped Vergara whenever he did get that little bit of time off. Could have ended up very different, but a close fight as a plus or as an underdog play, it was definitely a close fight.
29-28. Keep making that play at plus 150 or something, and
yeah. Matthew Semmelsberger, you beat the line movement. Close fight. Uros actually looked pretty good. Getting the finish in the third round, that was super surprising with him coming in on short notice. I don't think anybody could have predicted that one right there. You had the over 2.5 rounds in the main event. Another one, I don't think anybody's predicting that. I certainly didn't predict a head kick knockout in the second round from Justin Gaethje. We were on the right side, though. We both liked Justin Gaethje. Neither one of us pulled the trigger, though. That's a little upsetting in hindsight. You had the under 2.5 rounds in the Miranda Maverick Priscilla Cachoeira fight. Yeah, that was a sweat. I think it hit 19 seconds, something like that. Very close, but it was even money. So that sounds about right. You know, you had the under 2.5 rounds in the Chiesa versus Holland fight. After watching that play out, the under 1.5's hitting at like an 80% clip in that fight. that was a really good play for sure. Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz. You had the under in that one. I fell victim to this as well. It was just two guys who bring a lot of violence to the table, and we just didn't get that knockout. We got a great fight though.
Reminded me of Rockhold and Costa. Like ton of finishing upside, but as soon as it hit that 1.5 round mark at elevation, both guys just didn't really have much left in them, you know?
Yes, I agree. And I actually think it was the right decision, too. I'm happy that Pereira won that. As far as the takedown goes, it's not going to win you around.
Didn't do anything.
What was that?
Didn't do anything with it in the last 30 seconds.
No, if he could have landed something, maybe I could have seen it. But, yeah, I'm happy that the judges are at least staying consistent with how they're judging that part of the criteria. You had Bobby Green and Rogerio de Lima in a parlay for only one unit at plus money. Green was obviously a lock. He didn't let up at all. And then Derek Lewis, we'll talk about him a little bit more, but he spoiled the party right there with Rogerio de Lima. The line opened up at pick'ems, and then it got way out of hand as the week went on. You still got in before they got too out of hand at minus 175. You had the under 2.5 rounds in the Jake Matthews Darius Flowers fight. Good call for sure. Minus 175. I like that. And Darius Flowers taking that on short notice. All the mix-ins were there for the under. Then you had both the unders in the Semmelsberger Medic fight and the Claudio Ribeiro Roman Kopylov fight. The Medic one, it was
6 seconds.
The potential was there. And yeah, it was just whatever. Like you said, like less than 10 seconds after the under 2.5 round mark where it didn't hit. The Roman Kopylov fight, Roman looked awesome, man. I think that he's got a bright future ahead of him. You ended up the night minus 5.73, took a little bit out of your 10-unit win the week before, so not that bad, man. Moving over to my card, pretty small card for me. I was coming off of a 7-unit loss the week before, so I was a little tentative on my plays. My only straight pick of the night was Derek Lewis at plus 182. It's fun watching Derek Lewis win, man. It is so nice having a little bit of money and watching him celebrate after the win. It's a fun time for sure. He's good for the sport as far as entertainment goes. I had Bonfim inside the distance. It was his win condition. It wasn't, I only put 1 unit on it, but at minus 200, that being his win condition, I did like the play. Like I said, I fell victim to the Alex Pereira Blachowicz violence. I took the fight doesn't go the distance in both that fight and the Matthew Semmelsberger Euroshmetic fight. It was around even money. I put 1.5 units on it. Pretty upset I didn't get that one, to be honest with you. It just stinks, like we've already talked about, whenever 2 guys who should be finishing or usually finishes in their fight see the judges. And then Matthews wins inside the distance. I made that play last minute. I was thinking about the submission, but I didn't want to get greedy. Ended up hitting just the wins inside the distance, and he ended up getting the job done relatively quick. It was a plus 2.6 unit night, and hopefully I can keep that going moving on into this week.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we move on to the main event. It is in the bantamweight division between Cory Sandhagen and Rob Font. Shout out to Rob Font for taking this fight on short notice. Umar Nurmagomedov had to pull out. Rob Font comes to save the card. Unlucky for him, he has drawn Cory Sandhagen. Rob Font, I think he has some of the best pure boxing in the division, and that's definitely his standout attribute as a fighter. But Cory Sandhagen has on par striking skills, plus he has a different diversity of attacks. He's willing to use his leg kicks. He's willing to use his movement. Is especially what I want to talk about. It's the most elite part of Cory Sandhagen's game. I think is him baiting his opponents into his game, lulling them to sleep, and then using his athleticism to kind of expose the holes that he finds as he makes reads over the course of a fight. One thing that I think works against Rob Font here is I don't think that his jab is going to find as much success as it has with previous opponents. Cory Sandhagen is not giving you that same, linear approach to fighting. He's off the center line almost always. And so in the last fight with Adrian Yanez, where Rob Font's able to throw out that jab and get the timing of Yanez's forward pressure, it'll be more. I see Cory Sandhagen bringing the offense more out of Rob Font, and we're going to be looking at Rob Font almost get desperate with his attacks because he's getting hit and not being able to hit Cory Sandhagen. On top of all that, Cory is the better wrestler in this matchup as well. So if something were to happen and Font does start to have success on the feet, I think it's much more likely that we see Cory start to mix in the wrestling game. It being 135 pounds, a lot of guys are really hard to keep down, but Rob Font isn't somebody who I think has the wrestling credentials to get back to his feet constantly, especially after that midway point in the fight. So like I said, I definitely love that Rob Font took this fight, but I do think that he's got a world of problems here against Cory Sandhagen, and I expect him to lose either by finish or just get dominated over the course of 5 rounds. Are you feeling the same way about this?
I feel pretty damn similar, man. And, you got to think for Cory, pretty happy man going from a plus 200 underdog to now a minus 300 favorite in this main event spot. I think me and you've talked about it, man. He's pretty solidified himself as a top bantamweight. I'm unsure if this is a number 1 contender fight anymore, but yet again, here he is finding himself on the cusp of a title shot. Let's say Aljo goes out here next month and finishes Sean O'Malley, vacates the belt to go up to 45. We're looking at Cory Sandhagen potentially fighting for a vacant belt here in just a couple months, man. I think Cory is very, very good, and I think it's gonna take an elite wrestling game to cause him trouble. Somebody like Aljo, somebody like Umar, and I just don't see that out of Rob Font whatsoever. I think the fight largely plays out on the feet for 25 minutes. And you just almost can't not favor Sandhagen there, man. The guy just flows so well. The way he moves, and fights from both stances. His footwork, his movement is beautiful. He's one of the guys that actually can like swap and change stances mid combination, just cover so much ground. He has so many feints to his game. You talked about the way he throws kicks, man, just works the body, works the legs, has the knee up the middle, has elbows. He's one of the better strikers, like MMA strikers that I can think of just off the top of my mind. And then you talked about it, man. You see him rounding out his game, mixing in these takedowns against Song Yadong and stuff. And I rate this guy's fight IQ very, very high, making him an easy guy to back here as well. And when I look at Font, I don't see a wrestling upside for him. I think he's forced to give Cory the fight that Cory's going to thrive in. Intelligent jab, good boxer. He's a big bantamweight, so he does carry some power. And this is at 140 pounds. But man, I just fail to see really where he beats Cory at. Sandhagen has the durability edge. He wears the damage much better. He's got the better gas tank coming in here on a full camp that he trains at elevation for. And then I often talk about, when you have a primary boxer like Rob Font and you have someone like Cory Sandhagen who throws all the kicks, who offers all that volume, it really stifles people who rely on the boxing because they're constantly keeping their hands up to defend the shots. And I do think we see a master clinic from Cory Sandhagen on Saturday. I'm kind of waiting for that 4-5 decision prop to come out on FanDuel just because I do lean to it just like a 50-45 decision. But I'm not counting on a late stoppage here just to, due to like an accumulation of punches and stuff when Rob's face is all swelled up, eyes closed, things like that. So I'm all over Cory Sandhagen as well here, man. Then dropping down, women's strawweight division, we see Jessica Andrade stepping in here to take on Tatiana Suarez. And, Jessica Andrade, man, maybe she does it just for the money. Maybe she is just downright dumb, doesn't have the best manager of all time. But this girl is, in my opinion, constantly taking very bad matchups for her. And yet here she is again stepping in on, I do believe, short notice to fight a girl who might be one of the best wrestlers the UFC has seen. Both girls are going back down to 115 pounds. And, Jessica might not be the healthiest at 115. The weight cut might be harder, but I do think it's where she absolutely needs to be. I think she's proven that she can get to the top of flyweight division. She can fight Erin Blanchfield. She can fight Valentina. They're just too big for her, man. They can take her down and expose her. On the feet, though, big power, big hooks, great forward pressure. You know what you got with Andrade. My problem with her is I struggle to, and it's the same thing as I kind of went in back in Jianan last time. I kind of think Jessica Andrade might be on the decline. Age might not say so at 31 years old. She's actually the younger fighter in this matchup, despite having like 4 times the experience. But she's got so many fight miles, man. She's resorted to changing weight classes at this point, not finding success. She's been finished in 4 of her last 5 losses, submitted twice, knocked out twice, and shown clear disadvantages to girls on the mat like Blanchfield and Valentina, which is very relevant in this matchup with Tatiana Suarez, who to me comes to mind as one of the better wrestlers the UFC has seen in the women's division. Sarah McMahon's up there with like a silver, Olympic medal, but Tatiana Suarez is very dominant in her approach. She always sticks to the game plan. She's a finisher as well, finished 6 of her 9 wins, and including wins over former champion, strawweight champion Esparza, current flyweight champion Alexa Grasso. You see her dating her fiance is Patchy Mix from Bellator. Like, she surrounds herself in the game of MMA, and you always got to give her the props for battling through cancer, fighting all these injuries, and making that comeback after 4 years off. But, man, it was 4 years of her absolute prime of her career, and now coming back at 32, she is going to be the inferior striker here. I think there's a potential for her to have a bad weight cut. Tatiana has not made 115 in over 4 years. You could tell the weight cut to even flyweight was a little tough for her against Montana De La Rosa. And so if she gets Andrade down a couple times and can't do anything with it, it might get a little bit interesting, man. It's easy stylistic breakdown in terms of Andrade's the better striker wanting to keep it on the feet, and then you got Suarez want to take it to the mat, and typically that makes me kind of want to look at the under 2.5 instead of either side, but that's sitting at -200, and I don't really know how much chalk I want to lay on a women's finish, but I do think we see finish at a very high clip in this co-main event. I'm going to go Tatiana Suarez with a round 1 or 2 submission and get the job done. I think it's a good fight, man, for our co-main event in Nashville.
I don't know if it's going to be a good fight, but I do think that, I think that it's good that Tatiana is getting her spotlight right here. Yeah. You talked about maybe Jessica being on the decline. I more or less just think it's the matchups that she's getting, man. We say this over and over again in women's MMA, but the biggest thing working against her here is that Tatiana Suarez can match her physicality here. Mm-hmm. Every single one of her losses between Jan, Blanchfield, Shevchenko, Weili Zhang, those are all girls that match her physicality. And whenever she can't physically impose herself on her girls, she struggles, or on the girls that she's fighting, she struggles. And I think that she's going to run into Tatiana Suarez initially, and she might be able to ward off the first takedown because she is so strong. But once Tatiana continues to go to the well, we've seen time and time again that the muscle mass of Jessica Andrade wears on her. Tatiana Suarez still under 10 fights. So there's potential for her to, shit the bed here. But yeah. I'm with you as far as how to approach this fight. I think it's just finding a prop on the Suarez side that you feel comfortable with. I was really close to locking in plus 130 Suarez by submission already. I might still find that on my card. I think that she wins this fight at roughly 50% of the time by taking taking Andrade down and submitting her. So I think it's a 6.5% edge on that alone. If you do believe that she does that at least 50% of the time. Yeah. I wish I had more a differing opinion as far as the breakdown goes, but no, I think that Tatiana Suarez absolutely rolls here. Kind of glad that we're both on the same side. It's just about how you want to try and play this fight.
Yeah.
Moving on to my fight of the night, we're going to the bantamweight division, and it is between Raoni Barcelos taking on Kyler Phillips. One, I think it's kind of wild. Raoni is not getting any love because of a loss to Umar Nurmagomedov. I think a lot of this line has to do with him coming off of a first-round loss, which I actually lost a ton of money on. I thought the over 1.5 rounds was going to hit in that fight, and Umar catches him. Anyway, I think that it's fair to say that Raoni is suspect at this point in his career to also be on the decline.
Yeah.
And then Kyler, age-wise, he should be in his prime, but coming off of this layoff, the USADA suspension, there's a lot of what-ifs about Kyler's game at this point in his career. But one thing is for sure, he is a fast starter. Whenever he does have the gas to be able to throw the attacks that he does and shoot for the takedowns that he can get, I think that he's dangerous for anybody. Raoni, I think if he can avoid getting chin checked here, it's always kind of up in the air when somebody comes off of a KO loss like that, what he's going to look like. He's 36 years old in this bantamweight division. Doesn't usually bode well, but I do think that he has the skills that if he can outlast the initial pressure of Kyler Phillips, who now isn't on steroids, he might drop off even faster than we've seen in the past, and Raoni could take over with just his sheer experience. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're in for a really, really good fight for as long as this lasts. That's why it's my fight of the night. I'm not sure if I have a pick yet, although, after that breakdown, I'm sure everybody's led to believe that I'm kind of on the Barcelos side, and that is kind of where I'm leaning. I just don't know if I'm going to commit to it just quite yet. But fight of the night for sure.
Very, very similar thoughts, man. When I see the fight, when I look at it, I kind of wondering when's the Raoni love going to come in as well, because he's, all I heard when he was matched up against Miles Johns as minus 220 was max bets from people saying he wasn't washed from the Umar fight. And where's the love with him at minus 175 here now, I, for one, did mention it in when that Miles fight was booked and we talked about it. Like Andrade, there is concerns for the decline. You talked about 36 years old in a lightweight class like bantamweight. Though on the top of it, the fact that he's a Brazilian, man, it sucks to say, but we see them take a steep decline at some point in their career. There is a significant drop-off at some points. And, even prior to the Umar fight, man, he had lost 2 of his last 3 fights. For someone who was considered the dark horse of 135, you got to perform much better against Timur Valiev, who's on the Ultimate Fighter, and Victor Henry, a UFC debutant. The short left hook that Umar landed, I think Umar's an elite fighter. He was supposed to be in the main event. He has such a takedown threat that maybe people drop their hands in anticipation for it. But it does bring up the concern of the possibility of diminishing durability from a 36-year-old. I know the knockout was never an issue in the past, but it is a pause for concern for me at minus 200 against Miles Johns. But I do think the line could be a little bit wide here. You talked about Phillips. He's been out with a PED suspension for over a year and a half. The guy's shown me examples in 2 or 3 fights now that he has cardio issues. And if it's not a cardio issue, then it's like a fight IQ issue, spamming all the spinning attacks, starting too early. The guy constantly is mismanaging his gas tank in the octagon. And we also see Kyler rely on takedowns, rely on a submission game to really get a lot of his wins. And I think that's negated here, man, with Raoni's ground game. And so it's tough to pull the trigger for me on short notice as well. But this screams dog or pass, and going to side with Raoni Barcelos, man, to get the decision win. Fight of the night, we're going to move up to the light heavyweight division. We'll take Dustin Jacoby versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. This is one where, I know MMA math doesn't always add up, but it makes no sense to me here. I find the betting line a little bit odd when they have a similar opponent in Da Un Jung that they performed very, very different against. You got Dustin who went out there and starched him in 2 minutes, and you got Kennedy who goes out there and stands right in front of him, gets knocked out in 2 minutes, but is the minus 175 favorite and getting a lot of love this week. When I look at the fight, man, I think there's been some market overcorrection here. I do give Kennedy his props. He's the guy entering on a 3-fight win streak, all finishes, career seems to be on the upward trajectory. Jacoby is on the L2. He's approaching his mid-30s at this point. Maybe his best days are behind him. But I thought he should have gotten the nod against Khalil Roundtree. I think Mirzakhanov, after that fight, very much impressed me, man. And I think he's a top 15 fighter as it is right now. Dustin was a minus 175 in both of those fights. And I thought he should have won the Khalil fight. Hurts Mirzakhanov in round 2, almost gets the finish. Might have been round 3. But now he flips as a significant underdog to somebody who I question the ability to flip the switch when he gets in the octagon. Kennedy is somebody who, to me, always seems to fight from behind, not a quick starter, somebody that can get behind on volume. Wins over Carl Roberson, don't tell me much. Devin Clark, Kute Laba, putting it on him, hurting him early before he comes back. To me, I don't see either guy landing takedowns, looking to wrestle at all. I think the fight largely plays out on the feet. I think we're going to see a striking battle of length of Kennedy versus the more technical skill set of Jacoby. And I kind of lean toward the technique side. And you also see a fight that is favored to go over 2.5 rounds at minus 135. And I don't want to lay chalk. I want the dog ticket in a close striking decision. So, man, there's a couple reasons I made this my fight of the night. I think it's a close striking battle. I think there's potential for a market overcorrection here. And I'm going to side with another underdog and Dustin Jacoby to get the decision win.
Yeah, I think that's a great fight of the night. I'm also picking Dustin Jacoby to get it done there. I don't think that Kennedy has the type of game that's going to stop the attacks of Dustin Jacoby over the course of 15 minutes. I don't think that he pushes the pace well enough outside of just serving as a punching bag for guys who can also strike better than him. I think if Kennedy had like some wrestling pressure, I would be a little bit more inclined to be with everybody else and kind of be on the Kennedy side here, because he does have the length, the youth, all the things that you do like to see. But certainly in a fight that's a stand-up that's just going to take place on the feet, I'll take the accredited kickboxer than the young gun with the physical talent. So as far as Dustin Jacoby being a dog is concerned, I love that play.
Good stuff.
Moving on to my fighter to watch. Coming out of the light heavyweight division, it is Alexa Kamer. He is only 27 years old. He is coming off of an L2 and a 2-year layoff where He had some surgeries. He's probably trying to reinvent his career. After suffering 2 losses, you got to go to the drawing board. As far as him being under 30 years old, I love the layoff, even if the surgeries weren't a part of it. I love a sub 30 years old layoff for multiple years after having UFC experience. I think we've seen time and time again guys come back, and the biggest one is Brian Ortega. Whenever he came back, and I'm forgetting who he fought, but he
Zombie.
the Korean Zombie. He put on an absolute masterclass, outboxed him, looked like a completely different fighter. And I accredited that to his layoff prior to that fight. And I think that we could see some similar, or at least there's potential to see a similar outcome here in the Alexa Kamer fight. Whenever he was in the UFC in 2021 and fighting Negra Mariano, he showed some elite movement. I thought that he moved really, really well for a light heavyweight. He has some good foundational styles to him. And I do think that he just needed to maybe tweak a couple things in his game, and he could come out here and look really good against somebody in Tanner Boser, who I think at this point in his career, he's looking for answers himself. And so he's moved down to this light heavyweight division. And I'd much rather take the guy who has the potential to come out here and look completely new rather than a finished product in Tanner Boser. So that's why I'm kind of picking Alexa Kamer as my fighter to watch. Don't know if I'm going to be able to get a bet behind him, but if the line continues to go down, it might force me to fear missing out, and I might end up on him. But I do think that he's a great fighter to watch, even if you don't find a bet on him.
I like it, man. Fighter for myself, I went with the Sue Almabayev. I tried to fade the other undefeated prospect out of Kazakhstan a couple weeks ago with Tyson Nam's TKO. Odds were nice, but also I didn't really see what I wanted to see from a 16-0, Azat Maxim. When I watch Almabayev, I think personally he looks like the whole lot better prospect out of Kazakhstan to me. The guy fought on a really good regional scene, M1, ACB, Brave. I think he's a much more offensive, much better offensive level of wrestling. When he's on top, I think he's got a really good top game, dangerous submission game. You've seen this guy finished 11 of his 17 wins. I think there's a clear advantage for him on the mat. And I don't think this fight swings O'Day's way on the feet either. I think it's a very competitive fight on the feet. I think O'Day is long, O'Day is fast, but Asu looks really technical to me, and I actually think has the power edge as well. But I just keep going back to the grappling that I see for him, man. That style of fight is going to wear on O'Day, who has the suspect gas tank. I think he's going to find those takedowns. Under might be a decent look, because I do think we could see Asu get him out of there in a round 2 or 3 finish with a submission. I think it's a very, very talented 17-2 prospect out of Kazakhstan. So my eyes are going to be on Asu Almabayev this weekend in Nashville.
I like it. We're moving on to the underdog section, where I think that we have some pretty similar opinions here.
We do.
For the sake of mixing it up for the podcast, though, I'll go a little bit different here. I think Gavin Tucker is a live dog, man. I think that he really is. I think there's a huge overcorrection in Diego Lopez having a solid fight in his last time out, almost getting the finish, and showing that he is at least dangerous, if nothing else. I think that this is a fight I will talk about a little bit more in just a second. So I think that Gavin Tucker, he's only got 2 losses. Diego Lopez, if this doesn't end up on the ground, I think that Gavin Tucker has a little bit more diverse striking game.
Absolutely.
And he's strong enough to keep it on the feet. So if this maintains on the feet, I think Gavin Tucker has more than enough opportunity. He's getting up there a little bit in age, which you brought to my attention. I really wasn't aware that he was already 37 years old. But he's shown potential to be to be able to get UFC wins, and I'm not necessarily sure that Diego Lopez is at that level, even if he is making close fights here. So I'm on Gavin Tucker as my dog of the week here.
Yeah, it's not to the same extent, but I'm a firm believer in this fight would be a whole lot closer had Mobsar just ran right through Diego Lopez like he was supposed to on short notice. Diego Lopez is a very opportunistic submission finisher, and that's Movsar pretty much had to take. That's Movsar's game plan, is to take people down. So he had to take the fight pretty much to where Diego was best at, and I think that's what made it interesting. When I look at this fight, it kind of reminds me of Victor Henry versus Barcelos, where Victor Henry is a massive underdog, comes in, overperforms in his debut, and I believe it's his next fight when he comes in as like the minus 300 favorite to Tony Gravely, I think, and loses the fight. I think there's a chance that like you said, Diego Lopez just kind of overperformed in his debut spot on short notice on the big stage, and if he can't find the submission, Gavin Tucker's a pretty solid fighter, man. I like it. The one we agree on that we're going to talk about, Cody Durden, got him at plus 160, man. I don't, if Cody wasn't coming in on a couple weeks short notice, this is lined so much closer to a pick 'em, in my opinion. Cody Durden is massively improving on the feet as well, really rounding out his boxing. I still kind of favor Jake as the better boxer of the two, but I don't think there's a clear advantage on the feet from really either one of them. I go to the clearest advantage I see, and that's on the mat for Cody Durden, man. I have no faith in English grapplers. I think they're kind of fraudulent. I think Jake Hadley is more BJJ than he is anything. And I think wrestling and top pressure can completely neutralize him, just like the Nascimento fight. That shows me that there is a clear path to victory for Cody, to find top control and ride out time here. I've also seen Cody in the Alatang Haley fight, or no, it's another Chinese guy. Arichi Lang, and the Charles Johnson. And he digs deep in round 3, finds the takedowns, does what he needs to do to secure wins. I know you aren't the biggest fan of Jake Hadley either, man. I think there's a lot of value on Cody Durden this week.
Yeah, no, I love that pick. I'm glad that we're both on him. I think the UFC is, again, trying to punish Jake Hadley. I think if it's up to Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard, they're giving him bad matchups every single time. We're about to see Cody Durden put that American wrestling on old English boy.
Really good stuff.
Moving on to prop section. It is I'm going with Damon Jackson by submission plus 500.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, dude. I think Billy Q is more than willing to engage in the grappling with Damon Jackson. And I think early Damon Jackson is more dangerous because he's stronger. I think that he's stronger. Billy Q's kind of little Gumby, and I think that Damon Jackson's got crisp enough BJJ that if Billy puts himself in a bad position early, he could lock up a submission. So I love the plus 500 stab on it.
You broke up just a little bit there. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying that I feel like Billy is kind of like a Gumby. He's long, where Damon Jackson, he is a little bit sharper with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that I think if Billy Q is willing to engage, he'll get himself in positions where I think Jackson is able to squeeze hard enough, his jiu-jitsu sharp enough that he could expose Billy early while he still has gas in the tank. So yeah. I think that it's just a fight that's going to end up on the ground, and Damon Jackson early is a little bit more dangerous, which is why I like the plus 500 here.
Yeah, I like that, man. I like Billy Q, but I can't lay chalk on a guy who loses round 1 at a pretty decent clip a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
Prop for me, I'm going to go Tanner Boser by decision, plus 150. I did track the money line on Bet MMA, but I think this is a great way to get a much better number, get plus money on his most likely path to victory. Boser, to me, the much more experienced guy, and I do think he's the better fighter. I think he's shown a better gas tank. He has shown me the ability to go 15 minutes very easily and not slow down. He's got very good striking, the ability to win minutes with volume and kicks on the feet, and he has a little bit of a size edge here at 205. To be honest with you, man, watching Kamer back, he's 27. There is room for improvements, but I'm not that high on him, man. To be honest with you, he had over a year layoff before coming back to fight Ngamera. I just didn't see the improvements that I really wanted to see. I think the guy's inexperienced, fought a pretty low level of competition. We've seen him kind of outclassed with volume and striking, getting behind on the numbers. I think he has to take Tanner Boser down here to win. And that is a likely path. We've seen Tanner Boser struggle with the takedowns before, but I think that was the reason he moved down here to light heavyweight. The Nascimentos, the big 265 heavyweights, they were coming in 30 pounds heavier than he was, and they had the takedown upside here. I do think the takedown defense of Tanner Boser will look a little bit better at 205, and if he's able to keep this on the feet, I think he just outclasses him with the volume, the kicks, wins minutes on the outside. He's a decision machine, man. Kamer's never been finished. He's a tough kid. At plus 150, I think Tanner Boser by decision is a good look.
All right. We'll move on to best bet section of the podcast. My best bet, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to eat, but it's the Tatiana Suarez by submission. You know?
Yeah.
I don't see it going any different. I think that she's better at getting the fight to the mat than Erin Blanchfield is. And so if she does it quicker, I think it's the same thing that's going to happen. And Andrade isn't afraid to lose. She'll tap. Like she will. She's got 11 losses. What does another one mean to her? Tatiana Suarez is going to go out there. I don't think, knowing how many injuries she suffered through and the ups and downs of her career, I don't think it's ever her intention to go into the octagon to get some cage time. I don't think it is, man. You know, I think her mindset is to get in, get out, and continue her career so that she can gain a title before she's no longer in her prime. Yeah. And I think that this is a perfect opportunity for her to do that with a clear grappling edge. Yeah, Tatiana Suarez by submission at plus money too. Like, we are not even having to pay juice. Usually when you have a huge favorite like this with an obvious upside, you're having to pay minus 165 or minus 200 for their clearest path to victory, and you're not here, you know? So the only way that I see this one losing, obviously anything could happen, but the way that I see this one losing is her getting on top and just ground and pound, which, you know, at the end of the day, that's something you got to deal with. I think she wins this by submission a little over 50% of the time. So this is my best bet for sure.
I like it, man. I like it. I think she's going to get her down and find the back and choke her out as well. Best bet for me, Ignacio Bahamondes. Got him at minus 190. I think he's a little bit seen some love, minus 220s, minus 230s now. But I do like the matchup for him because I think Klein's going to give him the stand-up fight that Ignacio thrives in. I think Ignacio, to be honest with you, man, I could be jumping the gun, but I think he's a serious prospect for lightweight. He's still young, but I do think come like 5 years from now, 3 to 5 years from now, I do think we see this guy as a top 10 lightweight. I do. I think he is improving at a great rate. I think he has incredible size for the division. He is a very, very good striker, man. You have to get in on his length. You have to get past his volume. He's improving on the mat, adding submission games. And training with Bilal Muhammad, who is at the height of his career, you know, I think Ignacio really is going to take a step up in level in skill every camp he goes in. Every time we see him in the octagon, we're going to see a better version of him. I just like him to throw out twice the volume of Klein. I think he has a much better gas tank of Klein. 7-inch height advantage, big cage, ton of room to work around. I think he's got a hell of a chin as well. Great takedown defense. I like Ignacio Bahamondes to get a late stoppage here. I think that volume and pressure and just size is going to eventually wear on Klein, and one of those kicks or something's going to dig to the body and put him away late. So I like Ignacio Bahamondes, and I think the future's bright.
I'm off this fight, but I like how high you are on him. It'd be a surprise to me if, like you said, in a few years he's in the top 10, but you're right. He certainly has all the physical attributes and being young and having the UFC experience. I understand what you're saying. You nailed it. He gets hit a lot, bro. I hate that part. I hate that part about it, but he has a great chin to go along with that. So that's definitely working in his favor. We move on to the quick pick section of the podcast. We start off the night in disagreement at flyweight, maybe. So Ode Osborne versus Asu Alimbiev. I think I got Ode here, man, at least at the current odds, and especially if they keep on inflating. I think Ode's getting some hate for some flash finishes, you know, and I do think that barring those flash finishes, he's shown some pretty decent potential at the UFC level, which is ultimately why I'm picking him here. I think that there's a lot of unknown for Asu in my mind. And even though his opponent's records are pretty good, I don't even know any of the opponents that he's won. I don't know them. So this one, I'm a little, shaky. I don't know if I'm going to find a actual play, but Ode's my pick for this one.
Yeah. I do sign or lean toward the other side in Asu. And like you said, getting quite a bit of love this week. If it's close, I feel like it could be like the Zach Maxim fight, man. I thought Tyson Nam really made a case that he could have won that fight, and they did a 30-27 for the 16-0 prospect. I think I know who they want to prop up here. I like the skill set. I like the area he comes from. I'm going to do Asu Amabayev in the first fight. Sean Woodson versus Dennis Bazooka. This is what Sean Woodson's like third or fourth opponent change, and I don't know, man. At Pick'ems, I might have taken a shot on Sean Woodson with the size advantage and just the full camp. Dennis Bazooka, though, has been calling for his UFC shot for a long time. He's been on the Contender Series. He's got wins on the regional scene even after that. He's been, he's in Nashville with Billy Q. Dennis Bazooka is somebody to me that knew his UFC calling was coming soon. I don't think he's taking it off the couch. I think Dennis Bazooka is going to come in good shape and make the fight close, but I'm going to go Sean Woodson by decision.
Sean Woodson, on paper, looks like the perfect 145er, but when he's in the actual octagon, he doesn't have the physicality to be in there with other 145-pounders. Especially at favorite odds here, I would never play Sean Woodson. He is great whenever he's the one leading the action, but anytime that somebody puts it on him, really, really goes after him, I think he folds under the pressure and he lacks a little bit of that dog. I'll take Dennis Bazooka here.
Nice.
Moving back down to the flyweights, Jake Hadley versus Cody Durden. Hate both these guys, but going for the American wrestler here in Cody Durden. I think he's a good dog.
Yeah, I own Cody Durden as a dog as well. Moving up, men's featherweight again, Billy Q taking on Damon Jackson. I'm back and forth on this fight. I favor Billy Q, but I favor the line of Damon Jackson. I just think Billy Q is somebody, like I said, that loses the first round at a high clip. I think he's somebody that tends to start slow, come on toward the end of a fight, and is a much better look live than he is at minus 170 or minus 150, whatever he is now. I'm going to side with Billy Q. I'm not betting Billy Q until it's a live bet, though.
I'm siding with Damon Jackson. As we've seen, Ige's legit. Like, Ige is good, and so is Ilia Topuria. And those are his only two losses in the UFC. And outside of that, he's strung together like a really good, I'll give him decent 4-fight winning streak before the Dan Ige loss. And I don't think that Billy Q has as much finishing potential or just in his hands, in his striking. There's not much finishing potential. So I don't think that Damon Jackson is having to worry like he was against Ige or Ilia Topuria. And so I've got Damon Jackson here. I think him at dog price is also, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Moving up to the welterweight division, Jeremiah Wells versus Carlston Harris. I'll take Jeremiah Wells. Not a lot of conviction in that.
I did take Jeremiah Wells as well. Carlston Harris is a opportunistic finisher, but I don't really like his ability to put together a 15-minute decision victory if needed. I think if anybody's able to do that, it's Jeremiah Wells with the top game, the stronger wrestling of the two, and just staying safe from the submission game. But I think both have finishing upside on the feet. It's a good fight. Go Jeremiah Wells.
Harris he'll throw the entirety of his attack arsenal in 5 minutes, and then he doesn't have anything new to offer. And that's, like you said, that's where he gets caught.
Yeah. Prelim main event, Raoni Barcelos.
Who'd you take? You took Wells?
Yeah, I took Jeremiah Wells.
Okay.
And I think I do have a 1-unit shot on him as well.
Yeah.
Raoni Barcelos versus Kyler Phillips. Man, I'm gonna take Raoni Barcelos. At least I think that's where the value is on the money lines right now. Barcelos for the upset in our prelim main event, man.
Yeah, I agree with you. Barcelos is the side here. Phillips coming off the layoff is a little too much, already being a gasser pre-layoff. Mm-hmm. So Barcelos for me as well. Moving up to the lightweight division, Ignacio Bahamondes versus Ludovic Klein. Not as high on him as you are, but hopefully he'll show me a little bit more than I've been giving him credit for. I'm on Ignacio Bahamondes to get it done as well.
Yeah, I like Ignacio Bahamondes for my best bet this week. Maybe a slight disagreement at 205. Tanner Boser versus Alexa Kamer. I'm gonna go Tanner Boser, man. Maybe I'm just completely blinded, not seeing things the right way, but I think Tanner Boser is the better fighter here at any point in their career. Tanner Boser, I like him, man. It's gonna be my pick.
I'm going with Alexa Kamer here. Like I said, I like the layoff when pre 30 years old. So I'm just going for the potential of what Alexa Kamer could look like. Should be a good fight though. So it's more just because he's a dog here in a fight that could go either way for me. Moving down to the flyweight, featherweight division, Gavin Tucker versus Diego Lopez. I like Gavin Tucker here. I think he's going to be strong enough to keep it on the feet. If he is, I think he'll have a lot of success there. At the same time, though, his bread and butter is his submission game as well. That's where 50% of Gavin's wins come as well. So there is a potential for like fight ends by sub if there's a decent price. But I'll be taking Gavin Tucker in the off chance that it does stay on the feet. I think he'll piece up Diego Lopez.
I think you're right, man. Gavin's clearly the better striker to me, but there's just so many red flags back in the 37-year-old. Bad knockout and long layoff. And the Rick Glenn performance always sticks in my head. And I know this is not even the same stylistic matchup as Rick Glenn, but it's something that's always been there for me, man. But then I keep having that gut feeling that Diego Lopez just completely overperformed in that
He's
debut.
A fraud.
And it could be, man, but I think I'm going to pick him. I think I'm going to pick Diego Lopez, but I don't think I'm going to have any action on that fight. Moving up back to 205, Dustin Jacoby taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu. Man, I honestly might end up pulling the trigger on Raoni Barcelos and Dustin Jacoby before Saturday. I think there's clear value on him. Dustin Jacoby, my pick, man.
Yeah, I like Dustin Jacoby as well. I forget. I don't know. It's find a matchup where the majority of the fight is going to take place on the feet, and if the underdog is a better striker, that's an auto play.
Yeah,
I love that. Right?
Yeah,
like it's pretty good. So Dustin Jacoby is he's the pick for me as well. Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez in the co-main event at strawweight. Tatiana Suarez should absolutely roll here.
I'm with you. Tatiana Suarez early round submission, and then I think somebody else is going to roll in our main event at 140-pound catch weight. I got Cory Sandhagen all day. I think there's a chance for a championship round finish, but I think it's just going to be a clear masterclass all the way to decision. Cory Sandhagen's a clear, easy pick for me.
Rob's definitely tough to finish. Sandhagen will throw a flying knee like we've seen in the past, and like he has fight-ending potential shots where he might not just pepper him the whole five rounds. So I think there is a potential for a finish even early, just after Rob Font's been touched up a little bit. He gets a little sloppier, and Sandhagen could pounce. Either way, Sandhagen should dominate here on Saturday.
Nice, man. It's 12 total fights going down in our backyard, Nashville, Tennessee this weekend. So, man, I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you next week for some new fights.
Peace.